Sheikh Rashid Al Mansour believed he had finally found peace when Elena Marquez entered his life. But behind her flawless smile, Victor Salonga, Marina Klein, and Omar Velasquez were already building a trap that would cost him his trust, his fortune, and his sense of safety forever. Sheikh Rashid Al Mansour was widely seen as an ordinary figure among the wealthy elite of the Gulf. He did not seek attention, avoided social media, and rarely appeared in newspapers unless it was related to business. His fortune came from decades of disciplined work in maritime logistics, port development, and private investment firms that operated quietly across the Middle East and Southeast Asia. Those who knew him described him as careful, reserved, and deeply traditional. He lived alone in a large but modestly furnished estate and followed a strict daily routine built around work, prayer, and limited social obligations. As Rashid approached his mid-40s, subtle changes became visible to those around him. He began attending international charity conferences, particularly events focused on education, disaster relief, and women's development programs. Advisors believed he was thinking about legacy, something beyond profit. These appearances placed him in environments far from his usual boardrooms, surrounded by diplomats, philanthropists, and public figures who understood how to shape perception. It was during a high-profile charity gala in Singapore that Rashid first noticed Elena Marquez. She stood out not because of extravagance, but because of restraint. Unlike others who sought cameras, she kept a low profile, speaking briefly when required, and spending most of her time with organizers and volunteers. Her background was well known to the public. A former Filipina beauty queen who had turned away from entertainment to focus on charity work in rural island communities. Online articles praised her humility, her dedication to education projects, and her story of rising from poverty to national recognition. From Rashid's perspective, Elena represented something rare. She appeared grounded, religiously respectful, and untouched by scandal. Her interviews emphasized family values and gratitude rather than ambition. Their first meetings were formal and limited to public settings. There was no rush, no dramatic gestures, no visible pressure. This slow pace reinforced Rashid's trust, aligning with his belief that sincerity revealed itself through patience. Over time, introductions were made through mutual contacts in charitable organizations. Background checks conducted by Rashid's team revealed nothing alarming. Elena's finances appeared simple, her foundation registered properly, her public record clean. Even her past controversies, including the loss of her beauty title, were framed as minor administrative issues caused by sponsorship disputes. Everything about her story felt complete and resolved. When news of their engagement emerged, the media reacted enthusiastically. Headlines painted it as a cross-cultural love story built on shared values and humanitarian goals. Analysts praised Rashid for choosing a partner known for compassion rather than fame. Elena's image transformed overnight from former beauty queen to future Sheikh's wife, admired for her elegance and discipline. Social platforms flooded with supportive messages, and charity organizations highlighted the potential impact of their combined influence. The wedding itself was private, attended by a carefully selected group of guests. There were no extravagant displays, no unnecessary luxury. The simplicity of the ceremony reinforced the public narrative that this union was based on respect, not wealth. After the marriage, Rashid returned to business, confident that his personal life was finally settled. What no one questioned was how perfectly Elena seemed to fit into Rashid's world. She adapted quickly to cultural expectations, learned protocols, and maintained a quiet public presence. She avoided excess, avoided controversy, and praised Rashid's generosity whenever asked. To outsiders, she appeared grateful and devoted. To Rashid, she represented stability and trust after years of solitude. But beneath this carefully constructed image, details remained unnoticed. Small inconsistencies in her past were dismissed as misunderstandings. New connections forming around Rashid were seen as natural expansions of charitable work. Every move felt reasonable, legal, and harmless. The foundation of trust was laid smoothly, without force or urgency. By the time Rashid believed he had found peace, the structure around him was already shifting. The perfect image was complete, and the stage was set for something far darker than anyone imagined. Long before Elena Marquez entered Sheikh Rashid Al Mansour's life, there existed a separate world that never appeared in interviews or charity brochures. This world operated quietly, moving through airports, offshore offices, and temporary residences where names changed easily and past failures were never discussed openly. Elena's fall from public admiration had pushed her toward this hidden circle, not out of desperation alone, but from a growing belief that power was something taken, not given. After losing her beauty crown, Elena faced financial strain that public supporters never saw. Sponsorships faded, invitations stopped coming, and the foundation she promoted struggled to survive. It was during this vulnerable period that Victor Salonga re-entered her life. Victor was a calculated man with an understanding of risk, but little patience for slow success. His past ventures in real estate and import businesses had collapsed under debt and legal pressure. He survived by identifying opportunities in people rather than products. Victor introduced Elena to Marina Klein, a foreign financial strategist who specialized in creating complex networks of shell foundations and layered accounts. Marina operated legally on the surface, registering charities and consulting firms across multiple jurisdictions. Her strength was not theft, but redirection. Funds passed through her systems rarely triggered alarms until they were far beyond reach. She believed the safest crimes were the ones that looked like paperwork. Completing the circle was Omar Velasquez, a man who understood the weaknesses in international marriage laws and asset control systems. Omar studied how legal authorities shifted after marriage, especially in cultures built on trust and discretion. He never appeared in official documents, preferring to remain behind layers of intermediaries. His role was planning, not execution. Together, they observed patterns among wealthy men who lived disciplined, private lives. These men avoided scandal, trusted institutions, and believed that a carefully chosen spouse was a symbol of stability. Elena, with her calm image and history of public service, fit their criteria perfectly. Her beauty alone was not enough. It was her reputation that made her valuable. When Elena began attending charity events abroad, it was not accidental. Each appearance was planned and reviewed. Her language was simple, her posture modest, her involvement genuine enough to pass scrutiny. Victor ensured that her digital history remained clean. Marina structured foundations that appeared transparent and compliant. Every detail was aligned to withstand investigation. By the time Sheikh Rashid noticed Elena, the groundwork had already been laid. The group understood that speed would destroy credibility. They avoided aggressive moves, focusing instead on building emotional and legal proximity. Elena never asked for money. She never hinted at ambition. Her role was patience. As the relationship progressed, Victor and Marina monitored developments from a distance. They studied Rashid's routines, advisors, and corporate structure using publicly available information. Omar analyzed Rashid's legal environment, identified a potential point of access that could be reached only after marriage. Nothing was rushed. Every step was deliberate. Once the engagement became public, the group tightened control. Marina adjusted financial structures to prepare for future inflows. Victor began shifting his own assets, anticipating a change in scale. Omar prepared documentation templates that could later be justified as routine legal processes. None of this raised concern because no actions were taken yet. To Elena, this was not simply deception. It was a long-term operation built on discipline. She convinced herself that Rashid would never suffer, that wealth at such levels could absorb losses without consequence. The moral line blurred with time and careful justification. What mattered was execution. As the marriage approached, the hidden circle remained invisible. No criminal records surfaced. No suspicious transfers occurred. Everything remained dormant, waiting for the moment when trust would be complete and authority quietly shared. By the time the wedding ended and the public celebrated a story of love and cultural unity, the machinery behind Elena's calm smile was fully assembled. The trap did not close suddenly. It waited, confident that no one notices a shadow when the light is carefully controlled. After the wedding, life inside Sheikh Rashid Al Mansour's estate settled into a rhythm that appeared peaceful and orderly. Elena Marquez adjusted quickly, learning household protocols, cultural expectations, and the unspoken rules that governed Rashid's private world. She dressed modestly, avoided unnecessary outings, and limited her social presence to charity-related functions approved by Rashid's advisors. To staff and associates, she seemed respectful and disciplined, someone who understood the responsibility that came with the family name. Rashid, in turn, experienced a sense of balance he had not felt in years. He continued managing his businesses, but with less urgency. Elena's presence allowed him to delegate more, especially in matters related to philanthropy. She proposed organizing charitable activities through a structured international foundation, arguing that it would create long-term impact rather than one-time donations. The idea aligned with Rashid's values, and after careful review, he agreed to move forward. The foundation was registered across multiple regions, presented as a global initiative supporting education and disaster relief. Legal reviews found no immediate issues. Audits showed transparency. On the surface, the operation looked well managed and compliant with regulations. Rashid authorized limited funding, expecting gradual expansion over time. What he did not see were the silent pathways embedded within the structure, pathways designed to move funds quietly and efficiently. As months passed, Rashid's involvement in daily operations decreased. Elena handled scheduled correspondence and updates. Reports arrived on time, neatly organized and reassuring. She emphasized caution and sustainability, never urgency. This careful approach further strengthened Rashid's trust. His advisor saw no reason for concern, as every action followed legal procedure. During this period, Rashid's health began to change. He experienced fatigue, dizziness, and recurring headaches. Doctors attributed the symptoms to stress and age, recommending rest and reduced travel. Rashid complied, canceling several overseas trips and spending more time at home. Elena took responsibility for communicating with partners and signing routine documents under prior authorization. Gradually, financial activity increased. Contributions were routed through the foundation for various initiatives. Each transaction appeared justified, accompanied by detailed reports. Some funds were labeled as emergency allocations following natural disasters abroad. Others were described as early investments in long-term educational infrastructure. Everything seemed reasonable within the scope of charitable work. One significant transfer occurred while Rashid was receiving medical treatment abroad. The documentation indicated an urgent insurance-backed investment linked to shipping operations affected by regional instability. Rashid approved it remotely, trusting the summary provided. Within days, the funds moved through multiple accounts and disappeared into jurisdictions known for financial secrecy. Rashid noticed nothing unusual at first. The reports remained consistent, the foundation's public image strong. Elena continued presenting herself as cautious and supportive. She expressed concern for Rashid's health and encouraged rest, reinforcing his reliance on her management. Behind the scenes, the operation reached full momentum. Marina Klein Systems redirected funds efficiently. Victor Salonga prepared exit strategies. Omar Velasquez ensured legal buffers remained intact. Yet outwardly, nothing changed. No sudden spending. No visible luxury. Silence was their protection. By the time Rashid began to sense unease, it was subtle. Numbers no longer aligned perfectly. Small delays appeared in reports. When he asked for clarification, explanations arrived quickly, supported by paperwork. Doubt was smoothed over before it could take shape. What Rashid did not realize was that the marriage had quietly shifted control over parts of his world. Authority moved not through force, but through trust and routine. Each signed document, each approved transfer, each moment of rest created distance between Rashid and the reality forming beneath him. The marriage that promised stability had become the mechanism of loss. And still, the illusion held, because nothing collapses loudly when it is designed to fall silently. The first sign that something was wrong did not come from a dramatic discovery or an emotional reaction. It came from routine observation. Nabil Farouk, Sheikh Rashid Al Mansour's longtime legal advisor, noticed minor inconsistencies while reviewing quarterly documentation linked to the International Foundation. At first, they appeared insignificant. Approval timestamps that felt unusually close together, Signatures applied during periods when Rashid had limited access to communication, and procedural steps completed faster than normal. None of it pointed clearly to wrongdoing, but together they formed a pattern that made Nabil uneasy. Rather than raise immediate concern, Nabil began a quiet internal review. He compared hospital records, travel logs, and authorization schedules against financial movements. The results showed overlap that should not have been possible. Several approvals were recorded while Rashid was under medical supervision, unable to review full documents. Technically, the permissions existed, but the circumstances surrounding them were unclear. Nabil understood that accusations without proof could cause serious damage, so he proceeded cautiously. Rashid was informed only in general terms. He reacted calmly, asking for verification rather than confrontation. His instinct was not betrayal but confusion. The idea that his marriage could be connected to financial manipulation felt distant and unreasonable. Still, he authorized a discreet external audit to avoid internal bias. The audit expanded beyond the foundation and into associated consulting firms. That was when unfamiliar names surfaced repeatedly. Marina Klein appeared as an advisor in multiple jurisdictions, connected through layers of subsidiaries. Omar Velasquez was listed indirectly through legal intermediaries. The structure was legal on paper, but unusually complex for a philanthropic operation. As investigators followed the money, they found trails leading out of the Middle East and into Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia. Funds had not vanished in a single movement. They were broken into smaller amounts, transferred through compliant institutions, and reassembled elsewhere. The design suggested long-term planning rather than impulsive fraud. When Rashid requested a direct explanation, Elena responded with documentation and reassurances. Everything had a justification. Every anomaly had context. Yet the volume of explanations began to exceed what Rashid considered normal. Trust started to fracture, not from one event, but from accumulation. Before formal action could be taken, Elena left the country. The reason given was a family emergency in the Philippines. Travel permissions were valid, and there was no legal basis to stop her. Within days, Victor Salonga disappeared from Manila. Registered offices linked to the foundation went inactive. Accounts were frozen too late to prevent further losses. Rashid moved quickly but quietly. He initiated legal separation procedures and requested annulment under fraud statutes. The process was handled outside media attention, but documents leaked through investigative journalists who recognized the scale of the operation. What had been a private matter became an international case study in financial deception. Interpol notices were prepared, but the web of jurisdictions slowed progress. Some countries cooperated, others delayed. The operation had been designed with these obstacles in mind. Each delay reduced the chance of recovery. As the investigation continued, Rashid withdrew from public view. Business partners expressed support, but foundations distanced themselves. The image of stability he had built over decades was shaken, not by scandal alone, but by vulnerability. He closed several charitable programs, unable to determine which structures remained safe. The illusion collapsed not in a single moment, but through gradual exposure. Every layer removed revealed another beneath it. The marriage, once celebrated as a symbol of unity and trust, was now understood as the point of access. And by the time the truth became undeniable, the damage had already been carefully finalized. The aftermath unfolded slowly, without the dramatic resolution many expected. There were no public arrests broadcast on television, and no emotional statements delivered from courthouse steps. Instead, the case moved through sealed documents, international requests, and quiet negotiations between governments. Interpol notices were issued for Victor Salonga and Marina Klein, but both had planned for the stage long before it arrived. Their movements had become unpredictable, shifting between countries with limited cooperation agreements, leaving investigators one step behind. Omar Velasquez was the only figure the authorities managed to detain. He was arrested months later during a routine border check in southern Spain, traveling under a secondary identity that had already raised suspicion. During questioning, Omar revealed fragments of the operation, not out of remorse, but calculation. He confirmed that Sheikh Rashid Al Mansour was not their first target. Several smaller operations had succeeded before, but Rashid's wealth and trust made him the most valuable. Even then, Omar disclosed little that could lead directly to Elena Marquez. Elena's disappearance became the most haunting part of the case. Her public records went silent. Social media accounts vanished. Former colleagues claimed they had lost contact years earlier. Some intelligence reports suggested she had undergone a legal identity change. Others hinted she lived quietly in a country without extradition treaties, protected by wealth that could not be easily traced. None of the theories were confirmed. For Rashid, the financial loss was heavy but survivable. His companies remained intact, protected by structures built long before the marriage. What could not be restored was his confidence in proximity and loyalty. He dismantled the foundation at the center of the case, despite advisors recommending rebranding. To him, the damage was not cosmetic. It was structural. Rashid withdrew from public charity work entirely. Programs once supported by his funding closed or merged into larger organizations. He avoided interviews, declined awards, and removed himself from events where his presence once commanded respect. Those close to him noticed a return to isolation, deeper than before. The betrayal reshaped how he viewed generosity, not as a virtue, but as a vulnerability. Internationally, the case became a quiet reference point among financial investigators. Training programs cited it as an example of long-term trust exploitation. Legal reforms were discussed, particularly around marital asset authority and cross-border foundations. Yet few changes materialized quickly. The system moved slower than those who knew how to manipulate it. Years later, Omar Velasquez was convicted on limited charges. His sentence reduced in exchange for partial cooperation. Victor Salonga was never formally located. Marina Klein remained a name attached to unanswered warrants. The money recovered amounted to only a fraction of what had been taken, absorbed mostly by legal costs and administrative fees. Public interest faded as new scandals emerged elsewhere. The media stopped searching for Elena. Her name became a footnote in investigative articles rather than a headline. The fairy tale that once captured attention dissolved into a cautionary reference. Sheikh Rashid continued his life away from the spotlight. He restructured his businesses, strengthened internal controls, and lived with deliberate distance from emotional reliance. Those who knew him later said he became more guarded, but also more aware. Trust was no longer given through appearances, but earned through time and verification. The story ended without justice in the traditional sense. No final confrontation, no public confession, just a lingering truth that some crimes succeed not because they are violent or loud, but because they are patient. And in that patience, they leave behind losses that cannot be measured in money alone.